Hey, good day, folks, and welcome back to our Working Together series live with Rabbi Karmi Ingber, who's back in the United States. We're just always glad that he takes the time to share with us the beauty of Torah, and he's continuing with the book of Nehemiah. And we're joined today by our good friends in the Netiv Zoom room, and our friend Rod Bryant is dealing with a little illness, so we wish him well and a speedy recovery. We do appreciate everything he does down there, and yeah, so let's just jump right in and say hello to Rabbi Ingber. Shalom,
Okay, hi
Rabbi
everybody.
Ingber. Yeah, I'm going to turn the class over to you.
Okay, good to see
Recording in
everybody. How are we all
progress.
doing? Great. All right, today we're actually going to finish the book of Nehemiah, and it's very appropriate that we're finishing it at this stage because I imagine you guys do know this is a very sort of auspicious time in the Jewish calendar. Okay, this is the 3 weeks of the time where the gates of Jerusalem were first breached. Okay, and took 3 weeks of time from when they breached the walls till they destroyed the temple. Both temples, the first and second, were destroyed on the same day, on the 9th day of Av, which is this coming Wednesday night, Thursday, which is a fast day. And it is considered to be the saddest day in Jewish life. It's very apropos we're learning Nehemiah because it's the rebuilding of the Second Temple, and even though the Second Temple was also destroyed in the same day, but you have to understand the mentality and what it means that the Jews mourn over the temple and mourn over this sad day. It's not a lot of the things that people think how to look at it is exactly the opposite. So I'm going to try to explain today really the understanding of what it means that we're mourning over it. What is the purpose of death? What's the purpose of destruction? And how you view that really changes everything. If your view in life is things go to the end and they're finished and they're gone, and you subscribe to a nihilistic, random view of the world, okay, that's it. If you believe the world is purposeful, then you understand that the destruction is not the purpose of destruction, rather it is to move us to a new level. And therefore, when the Jews mourn the 9th day of Av, it's also going to be the day when the third temple is built. So the purpose of the pain is not the pain, it's the solution. Think about it in terms of a child. A parent who punishes the child, a normal parent is never punishing the child to hurt the child. That's a disturbed person. The reason why the parent is ever punishing the child is because the ultimate good that's going to come out when the child learns this is not the way to act. The child will say, oh, I don't want to act this way. I want to act the right way. And then the parent can give the child all the good the parent wants to give. And that too is what's happening on this time in these days of the 9th day of Av. And I'll explain a little bit the 9th day of Av because it's really connected. We're going to finish the book of Nehemiah today. It's just really fascinating. We're finishing it literally as this time comes to a culmination. Let me just first give you just a little history of what happened in the 9th day of Av. The 9th day of Av is when the spies first went out in the desert. When the Jews left the land of Egypt, they went into the desert. Okay, then they were supposed to go into the land of Israel. Right, if you go from Egypt to Israel, you pass the Sinai Desert. So they went in the Sinai Desert, and they were going to go into the land of Israel. And they said, let's send spies to see what the best way to go. Even though God's with us and it'll happen miraculously, we should make the proper effort on how to fight the wars and deal with it. So Moshe agrees to this, but really Moshe was already nervous. This was not the best idea because he knew that things could happen. People could say things and translate things, and for various reasons I'm not going to get into today, but the spies came back and 10 of the 12 of them said, it's an amazing land, but we can't conquer it. And the Jews cried on that day. They said, we don't want to go in. And they were punished to spend 40 years in the desert. That was on the 9th day of Av, of this month that we're in right now. And God said, now you cried in this day, this will be a day of crying. Now you have to understand this. People misunderstand. It's not like, the parent says, you want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about. That's not what it is. It's not like, I should have said, oh, you want to cry? Here, I'll give you. That's not what it means. What it means is that when you cry, crying is an incredible emotion. It's the two extreme emotions that are signs that a person's out of control of his emotions is laughter and crying. And that's why sometimes they even mix up. Sometimes people, when they're supposed to cry, start laughing, and vice versa. Laugh, it's not crying. The word boche in Hebrew is the word mevucha. Mevucha is trapped, to feel trapped. When you feel that everything's broken, you're at the end, there's nowhere to go, okay, it's a loss that you feel stuck, then the response is tears. So that should not have been the response. They should have said, okay, we want the land of Israel. They didn't. The tears that the Jews cry on Tisha B'Av for all these millennium is not for the point of the tears, it's the point of saying, we want to come back. We want, when I cry because I realize I'm missing something, the missing of it allows me to be able to get it. And that's the relationship with God also. When I say, oh, when the spies came back, the Jews in the desert said, we can't go to the land of Israel. And they cried. And God said, that's not the right tears. The tears have to be the tears, not that you're meant for this land. This is your land. The tears have to be, I want it. I need it. It's something I want. Like a child says to the parent. Like when the child says to the parent is that I realize I did something wrong, and I'm not even sure I know what I did wrong and how to get out of it, but I want to get out of it. And I feel bad that I'm this distant. At that moment, the parent can give the child what they have to give the child. So the 9th of Av became the day that is the day where it's not crying in the sense of a loss that's irreplaceable. It's the crying, the yearning to realize this is not what we want. We want to be back to the temple. But every time there is, in the process of history, a stumbling for the Jewish people, the 9th day of Av is that day. That's why, for example, they have in Israel the Holocaust Day. They made a Holocaust Day. I don't celebrate Holocaust Day because it's a made-up day. It's kind of like it's not a traditional holiday. When is Holocaust Day? Holocaust Day really is Tisha B'Av. As a matter of fact, the Holocaust started on Tisha B'Av, as did many, many things I will tell you in a moment. Both temples were destroyed. I'm going to actually give you a second. Just some of the things, a friend of mine compiled a list of some of the things. The Talmud lists the 5 things that happened on Tisha B'Av. A friend of mine compiled some of the other things throughout history that have happened on this 9th day of Av, which is the day where we get to experience the separation. So just to give you a list of some of these things. So it's quite incredible. So the ones that Talmud records that happened when the Talmud was recorded was that spies came back on that day, the destruction of the first temple, destruction of the second temple. So the first temple was by the Babylonians, the second temple was by the Romans on the same day, on the 9th day of Av. Both of them happened on that day. Now, the Talmud also then records in the year of the common year 132, the Bar Kokhba revolt was crushed. Over 100,000 people were killed in that revolt. So the revolt of Bar Kokhba was when the Romans took control of Israel. There were people that felt that they could revolt, and they could have. Bar Kokhba was a very fascinating person who could have actually become a great leader and really, but he didn't. He didn't listen to the sages the way he was supposed to, and he therefore lost his role. And his revolution to try to reestablish Jewish autonomy in Israel failed, and 100,000 people were killed. That also was crushed on the day of Tisha B'Av. There was an evil governor in the land of Israel by the Romans put there. He, on this day, the 9th of Av, he plowed the Temple Mount. Okay, and the Romans built a pagan city on the Temple Mount called Alio Capitolino on the site of the Temple Mount, a very, very terrible thing for the Jewish people. So that also happened on Tisha B'Av. Now, what happened now, and this is my friend of mine recorded, my friend Rabbi Becher, recorded some other things that happened on those days. The first crusade by Pope Urban II, 10,000 Jews were killed. And the first crusade was also on Tisha B'Av in the year 1095, the Common Era. In the year 1290 of the Common Era, the Jews were expelled from England on also that day, and all of their possessions were confiscated. In 1492, the Spanish Inquisition expulsion also came on that same day. Quite incredible. 1914. Russia declares war on Germany, and that is the beginning of World War I, which really, for all historians to know, World War II is really an extension of World War I, even though there was some years in the middle. But as historians know, what happened was they made the Treaty of Versailles, and it was just stoking the coals that was going to lead to the World War II. So it's really even though it was two separate wars, but it all flowed into one, and that was really the Holocaust. In 1942, the deportation of the Warsaw Ghetto to the concentration camp also on Tisha B'Av. 1994, the bombing of the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires, also on Tisha B'Av. But Tisha B'Av is a day that has been throughout history a day that has been a day of crying. But again, I want you to understand, because it's not a day of crying the way people think of it. It's a day of crying because it's a day that we yearn to go back, and therefore the tradition is the Mashiach is born on that day. The Mashiach's birthday is Tisha B'Av because that's when the point of the exile is to bring us to the redemption. And that's where we're leading into right now. And now the story of Nehemiah we're going to continue with, because really, and this is why I did it, I started this book because the story of Nehemiah is the reestablishing of the second Commonwealth, the second temple, which although they knew wasn't the final temple. They knew it was going to be destroyed. They knew it wasn't going to last forever. But it was where they structured the system to lead us to the end of history until the third temple is built. So we're up to chapter 11. The last thing we saw in chapter 10 in the book of Nehemiah, the last thing we saw was that they gathered the people together, the leaders, and they accepted upon themselves to strengthen themselves in various commandments that either they were lacking in, or some restrictions they wanted to place on themselves to make sure they didn't fall back like they had done. Because you understand, it's an amazing thing. If you go and you ask, let's say, an Italian American, one generation he may feel Italian, two, a little bit. The third generation is American. Like, what is it about Italy that he really feels? Oh, wow, I'm Italian. It's like, the Dalai Lama, when he wanted to keep together the Tibetan people, he actually came to ask the sages, how does it work? How does it that the Jews could be in exile for so long and still remain connected? And that's a guarantee that God gives us, that we will never, even in exile, we will not get lost. But this was the first exile. Okay, the Babylonians was the first exile, and so therefore it was a tremendous shakeup for the Jewish people. Today, you're all used to it, and the Jews are used to it, of 2,000 years in exile. The first 70 years, like, what is this? We had the Temple of David, Solomon. That was the pinnacle of Jewish history, and now we're 70 years in exile under the Babylonians, the Persians. So that whole mindset was shattering for the people. And if you look in the book of Ezekiel, very important, especially for people that make up other religions based on the idea that the covenant could ever be broken. But the Jews were shaken up, and they said to Ezekiel, they said, well, what's going to be? Are we divorced from God? He says, no, God forbid. It's never happening. You cannot. This is marriages forever. This is a point of separation. So the 70 years of Babylonian exile, were very difficult, and they had fallen. And now Nehemiah and Ezra, when they came back and they rebuilt the second temple, they had to reestablish the people's strength. And so in chapter 10, what we saw last time is they took a vow for all the things that they had slipped away, and they had become lax in. And they got the leaders to sign this document that's saying we will be careful. We will guard ourselves to what we have to be doing. That's what we got up to in chapter 10. Now we're to chapter 11. Chapter 11, we saw that Nehemiah, Nehemiah, he went and he recounted the people that came up in the ascent to Jerusalem. The reason why he repeated who was there is for what's happening in chapter 11. Chapter 11, now Nehemiah realized, he knew that the living in Jerusalem, there wasn't a lot of people. He had secured the walls of the holy city, but there weren't a lot of people living there. That's not good. Okay, it's not good for doing what you got to do in the Holy Land, protecting the holy city, and for what has to happen in the holy city. So what they did was they took every family, and just like we tithe money, produce, they did a tithing of families. Every person, for every 10 people, one person from that family committed to live in the holy city. Now, why would someone need to have to do that? Why would somebody need to have to make a commitment? Everyone wants to go. Who doesn't want to go to Jerusalem? You go to Jerusalem today, it's like packed. Well, the reason why is because people, city life is not easy. Right? Talmud says city life is not easy. You don't have space. You're on top of each other. Everyone's together. So city life is not so easy. And especially when it's an agricultural society. So they needed places to go. So people needed to farm. So they went to places outside of the holy city. So Nehemiah set up that from every family, every 10 people, one of the 10 would commit to live in Jerusalem. Besides, the other people volunteered. People want to live in the holy city. So they did. So that's what chapter 11 tells us. Chapter 11 goes through the people. Those who were now committing to live in the holy city and not to the outskirts of the cities where other people lived. Okay, so chapter 11 goes through where people settled, people who settled in the 1/10 who dedicated to live in Jerusalem, plus the people who lived on the outskirts of Jerusalem, which is the cities around there. Okay, today, a lot of different areas, but you have to remember, since Jerusalem was the center of the return, the people lived, outside of that area, in the area called Judea and Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin. That was the area that was around. They're kind of the center of the country today, which is amazing, by the way, because the center of the country is the most populated in Israel. And what has to happen is that the Jews need to go and settle the rest of the land. And though people do live in different places, people are congregating in the center of the country. And that's what's happening here. As they're returning, they need to be with other people in the center of the country. Okay, good. That's chapter 11. Now, chapter 12, he's giving us the names of the Kohanim and the Levites that came up and are now going to do the service in the temple. We need to know who's who and what's what and how they're going to rebuild and reestablish the whole holy city. So he gives us the names of the families of the Kohanim who do the service in the temple, the Levites who were the singers, musicians who played the music. Music, by the way, you just know, is one of the highest of the secular wisdoms. Music can transport you. Sometimes you actually hear music, and if you feel a sense of like being elevated, it's actually there's a teaching, music could stimulate the feeling you had even before you were born, of your soul before you were born. Sometimes you feel elevated. Music's a very powerful thing. and all the service in the temple was done with music. Now, just so you know, I mentioned to you, I'm a musician. I have a couple CDs, and I have a new one coming out. But we don't know what really Jewish music sounded like. We don't know. What's called Jewish music today, is influenced by what it's influenced by. I'm influenced by the Beatles. I can't say I'm not. I'm influenced by, by Crosby, Stills and Nash. I'm influenced by the sounds of people I heard as a kid, Bob Dylan, all the people that I listened to. And sometimes Jewish music is influenced by, klezmer music in Poland. That was it. The music of the temple was a whole different level, and we don't know what it was. As a matter of fact, if you look in the book of Psalms, you'll see there the story when they exiled the Jews to Babylon. They told the Levites to play. The Babylonians said, play us some of the music of Jerusalem. And the Levites cut their fingers. They said, we cannot play the songs of God on a foreign land. They wouldn't do it. Had to cut their hands to show them, we can't play anymore. But the music that was heard was beyond the level of elevation. It connected your soul in a very, very powerful way. And that's why the Levites were not just musicians. They were spiritually elevated people who were the Torah scholars and also had this quality of elevating the people. So in the chapter 12, he recites and he recants the people that are the Kohanim and the Levites who are in the temple and are going to take care of the service that he is now, after building the walls and rededicating it, he's building up Nehemiah and Ezra and the sages, building up the final expression of the second temple. Now, chapter 13. Chapter 13, there's something a little strange that happens here. In chapter 13, if you look in verse 6, it says that Nehemiah actually was called back by the king of Persia, Darius. The name is Ahashtasta, because that was the common name for all the kings, but it was Darius. He wanted Nehemiah back in Persia. He made up with him. He gave him a certain time to go to Israel. So he had to go back. But he said to the king, I can't stay here. I got to get back to Jerusalem. I got to watch out what's going on. In the meantime, where he went back to Persia to be by the king, because the king required that, before he got permission to return, in that short period, when he came back, he saw the people had slipped again. And this is very, very crucial, because you can have great, great intentions, but if you do not know how to make sure that what you want to do comes out in the world, your intentions start to fall away. The word in Hebrew is an amazing thought that the Mussar rabbis who gave us the view of how to work on ourselves, our personalities, they get an amazing insight. They say that the name, when Adam named all of the animals, it says he gave them the name according to their spiritual name. Right? A dog. How do you say dog in Hebrew? A kelev. Kelev is the combination of the word kol lev, all heart. And that's why Americans love dogs. Oh, they're so loyal. It also is kilev, which means like a heart, because it's still a dog. It's not like, I had a guy says to me once, I come home, my wife's not so happy with me, my kids aren't, but my dog loves me. It's not the same. It's only a dog. Yes, it teaches us loyalty and that, but a dog's a dog, and it's not a person, and don't get too excited. I know we all love our dogs, but the reason why Americans love their dogs is because it's all heart. It has a heart, okay? And every animal has the root of what it is. It's an amazing thing. The word chatul, animal, a cat, it's from the word chitul. Chitul in modern Hebrew means a diaper, but in biblical Hebrew, it means to clean yourself. The cat has a certain dignity. When the cat cleans themselves, it's not just like they're trying to be clean. The cat's like, you walk in, the cat cleans themselves like, who are you? Like, I'm in charge of this house. I'm the cat, So the cat's like cleaning themselves is a certain like pride that cats have. They're a little standoff. It's not like dogs. Dogs will do anything. They'll eat anything. Cats, they think they're the boss, so they like to be clean and to be very dignified. And all animals are like this. I can go on forever, but it's a fascinating thing. Yeah, I think one more. The word ant is a namal, nimala, and nimala is the word amel, work. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if they found this scientifically. The sages tell us that an ant gathers more food in its lifetime than it could ever live. It gathers more food. It lives a short time. I forgot the Talmud said how long it lives, but it gathers in its life more. If its life was, I don't know, 10 times more, 100 times more, it would still never eat all the food it gathers. And the ant has a quality of work. So they do. They're creating a system. They have this colony, ant colony, and they're all working all that they do all the time. And it's a fascinating thing. The sages tell us, it's an amazing thing. It says that if you look at nature, you can learn aspects of the Torah. You can learn not to steal from the ant. You know why? I don't know which kind of ant this is, but the sages tell us there's an ant that it smells when its friend picks up the food and carries it, if it drops it, it will smell or sense that food belonged to that ant and it will not take it. So you can learn not to steal from the busy ants because they work in harmony as a unit. And that's my friend's food. I'm not touching that. Incredible. So the word nimala is from their quality of work. So what is mankind called? It's called Adam. Adam, it says, I come from the Adamah, the earth. Human beings are called Adam, Bnei Adam. And Adam is called in English, but Adam means from the earth. Why we call from the earth? If we have a soul and you call the little doggy on the name of his great trait of loyalty, and you call people based on they come from the earth, and call me Soul Man, I can go into the whole song. Why are we not called Soul Man? Why are we called Earth Man? It's crazy. So there's a lot of different reasons for this. One reason it's a very great reason. The sages tell us because you got to know something in life. If you're not going up, the quality of earth is pulling you down. You can't stay still. People that say, yeah, I'm the same as I was 10 years ago, that's not good. Because they don't realize they'll compromise, they'll do less, they'll become less, they'll expect less of themselves. It's a wearing down of daily life because we are experiencing the earth element of ourselves much more powerfully than the higher element of ourselves, which is our soul. We're not as keenly aware of it. I always say, a person doesn't do a spiritual act, for a week, he's still living. Guy doesn't eat for 3 hours, he's just dropping dead. It's like, I can't live, I can't manage. Why? The soul is higher than the body, but we're attached to the physical. So the person who's not elevating himself doesn't realize he's not staying in the same place. He or she is not, because the earth is pulling them down. And that's what Nehemiah saw. Nehemiah, he had to go back to Babylon, to Persia, Babylon, to the king Darius for a short time before he got permission to return, as it says in chapter 13. And when he came back, he saw people were slipping again. And that's really what I want you to hear. In chapter 13, he starts to admonish the people again, and he puts things into place. They read the Torah and they talk about certain people, the Ammonites and the Moabites, who are not allowed to marry the Jewish people. This is incredible because everyone could convert. Even an Egyptian who killed the Jews. We were slaves in Egypt. Killed us. It's not, he could convert. And the Torah says, well, okay, he was bad to you, but he let you go and come to his country when you were downtrodden. All right, when there's a famine, he lets you come in. Then he turned around and enslaved you and killed you. All right, but if he wants to convert, but there were two nations, the Ammonites and the Moabites, that were very connected to the Jewish people. They were actually relative to the Jewish people. They were from Abraham's nephew Lot. And when the Jews came to the land of Israel, they were so negative that they did not want the Jews to come, even though we were no threat to them, even though we weren't going to touch them. They didn't want that. And the Torah says because of their inner hatred, they cannot convert. And if you look in the story here of Nehemiah, from the very beginning, there was a very powerful Ammonite person named Tovia who was wielding a lot of power there. And, and Nehemiah had to stand up and say, we need to clean house. If somebody, now, there's an amazing law here, a Moabite woman or an Ammonite woman can convert. Only a Moabite man and an Ammonite man cannot. So if somebody was an Ammonite man living or acting as a Jew, he cannot be part of the Jewish people. So they had to really clean house and make sure that there was no biases, because some powerful people were from Ammonites and they were hanging around the Jewish people right now. And Nehemiah comes up and he has them read the Torah and he tells them, okay, we got to be frank of who is who. And this is very, very important, because this is like a little bit, we talk about politics also. There's really a draining, I don't use this term, but draining of a swamp here, where Nehemiah looks at the people who are off and he says, either you get your act together, or you get out. So they start reading the people the Torah to Nehemiah, and he explains to them that he sees that what happened was the high priest Eliashiv, he had allowed his relative, who was actually an Ammonite, this guy Tovia, he had allowed him to have a chamber in the temple area. And he's a very powerful guy. And Nehemiah said, we're not doing that. We're not compromising on anything. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your power base is. You keep the Torah and that's it. Don't tell me I got to do politically. There's no political correctness. There's truth and not truth. Okay? And so therefore he went, when Nehemiah saw this, he went and he, in chapter 13, we saw that this guy, the high priest had given his relative, who was actually an Ammonite and not an accepted Jew, he had gone and given him a place inside a temple. He went and he saw this. It was very bad in his eyes, and he kicked him out. He said, I don't care about what you want to do. You can't be in the temple area. You cannot have an office here. And he chased him away, and he made sure to reestablish the holiness of the temple. Now, this is very important, what I want to share with you now, just to understand what's going to happen in 13, something I skipped in 12, but I want to tell it to you together. So what happens now is, and this is just to understand the whole picture of this, to tie the whole book together. What Nehemiah is doing is that he is reestablishing Jewish purity in the land for the second temple, which lasts for 420 years. But I want you to understand something. It wasn't only the second temple. What he established goes till today. We actually keep in Jewish law the decrees that Nehemiah and Ezra put into place. They put in various decrees that to this day the Jews all do. Okay? And I'm going to explain to you in a second. So what did he do now? So I didn't mention this earlier, but this is from chapter 12. But what he did was he re-sanctified the walls of the city. Now, what does that mean? It means a lot of things. To be a holy city is very difficult. And there are a lot of laws. For example, some of the offerings were eaten in the temple area, and some could be eaten in the whole city of Jerusalem. But if a person took an offering that was eaten in the city of Jerusalem and ate it outside the city, that's a very grave transgression. So what Nehemiah did and what Ezra did is they re-sanctified the city for their time until this day. The boundaries they set up are sanctified by them for their time and our time. And that was in chapter 12, the procession that they did. They took a offering, a bread offering, and they walked around the city. There's various ways they do that, but they walk around the city walls. And this was the air because that bread offering was only able to be eaten in the city. So since they said this are the boundaries of the city, and then that was eaten in the city, that was the rededication of the walls and the sanctity of the city of Jerusalem, the boundaries that Ezra and Nehemiah set up, which were not exactly the same as the boundaries of the first temple. The wall, even if you go today, you'll see the walls. They can show you. They have different. Places where archaeologists have walls. And the walls from the Second Temple time. There's the walls around the city of Jerusalem today, and you can see this some variation in the first temple, second temple, where Ezra and Nehemiah composed now and sanctified the exact boundaries of the city of Jerusalem. And it's there are laws today. I mean, there are laws today. When there's laws, we went inside the city, we could see the city. There's various things that are applicable even today. Of where the city is. There are certain laws about the tithing and various things that come out in aspects of Jewish law. But they sanctified the walls and said, this is the area of Jerusalem, and this will stay the area of Jerusalem forever. They went and they now gathered the people together. And they now, not only did they take on the things that they were weak in, but what Nehemiah did is he put certain guidelines to keep the Sabbath. So, for example, in Jewish law, there's a lot of things you can't do, and you can do, and you're supposed to go on the Sabbath. Sabbath is holy. You have to. But Nehemiah, if you look in the verses, he saw that things were happening that were shaky. And so Nehemiah put various laws in on the Sabbath that we can't do certain things that we may come to break the Sabbath. He instituted that. So for an example, we're not allowed to go, you can't, let's say, I don't know, you can't go and turn your phone on the Sabbath. So you're not allowed to actually move it even. That's a decree of Nehemiah. It wasn't by Torah law, but Nehemiah understood that if people don't create the boundaries to protect themselves, then they will fall into habits. And that is at the end of the book of Nehemiah. He starts recounting the things that he set up in place to make sure the Sabbath would be protected, to make sure there would be no intermarriage. There are certain laws and certain guidelines that the sages set up to prevent things from happening. Okay, he set those things up. He set up certain other boundaries to make sure that they kept the sabbatical year, the seventh year. He said various things, and he told the people that this is what you need to do. Now, this is so important, and the book ends. The book ends where he goes and he sets up a structure that they make sure that they would bring the offerings and the wood to the temple in a certain organized way, that everyone would have the temple as the center point of their lives. This really is the last step of what Nehemiah does with Ezra and his cohorts. What they're doing is they put in the fences that were not only going to protect the Jews in the second Commonwealth, the second temple, but they go to this day. And that's why in Jewish law, if someone doesn't keep the laws of the rabbis, they're not going to be able to do it. They'll get lost. And this is not the laws of the rabbis that they made up. The Bible says, the Torah says that God exhorted the rabbis and said the verse in the book of Leviticus, the asum mishmeres mishmarti, make a fence around my Torah. Because God wanted the sages to apply the proper parameters to protect people. I have a goal, I want to be something. But if I don't have a system on how to get there and to guard myself that I don't fall out, most people fall out, right? Go look at everyone's New Year's resolution. How long does that last? 3 days? 2? It doesn't make it to February, that's for sure. It doesn't. So you need to have set up the parameters, and it needs a lot of wisdom, by the way. Because if you set up too much, you break. Too little, you don't go. It needs a lot of wisdom to know the parameters that a person has the good intentions, but they can get to their goal. And that's what Nehemiah does in the last chapters of the book of Nehemiah. He goes and he consecrates Jerusalem. He finishes building the wall. He gathers the people. They sign their commitment just to put in writing to know that they're going to stay strong. He established the Kohanim and the Levites. He clears house. Okay, in the end of the book, in the chapter 13, the end, he talks about one of the big people, a descendant of the Kohen Gadol who intermarried, and he kicked him out. He threw him out. I mean, it even says, very politically incorrect, but at the end of the book of Nehemiah, he says like this. He goes, he said like this. At the end of the book, he says, verse 25, when he saw people were doing the wrong things, he says, I fought with them, I cursed them, I hit them, I pulled their hair out. I mean, he wasn't playing around, It was like he made them vow to God, and he because you have to realize that people it's okay, it's okay. It's only okay when it doesn't matter. If something matters a lot, then we want to do everything we can. And when he saw, for example, in verse 28, the descendants of the high priest, the Oyada ben Eliashib, one of his children, married into one of the enemies of Israel, he said, "Okay, you're in or you're out." And so he chased them away. That was the structure that led us into the establishment of the Second Temple. But it wasn't a Second Temple. It was the structure that leads to this day. The formula that the modern Jew does, the religious modern Jew, I'm not talking about, people who don't, whatever, call themselves Jewish, but don't do anything Jewish. But the modern religious Jew, his daily life is very, very much affected by the structures that the sages put it as safeguards to protect them. And that's necessary because they saw there's going to be another exile. They saw what happens in these times when people mix in. You can't not. It's impossible. It's impossible for a person to go. It's like, that's why, American Jewry is in a lot of trouble because you get affected by the ideas of your society. You can't not. And by the way, you all have to know that because it's hard to live in a society that espouses things and it doesn't affect you. Even if you disagree with them, it's amazing. Those who are sensitive to advertising and television, there's a brainwashing process in America that is in full bloom. And what happens is yeah. And what happens is that the first time you see it, you're like, what? During when, and I Love Lucy, they weren't allowed to have their feet off, it's on the bed, their feet had to be on the ground, So they had some fences, but those fences all disappeared. And there are no fences in America. It's all taken down. So now this mindset is you see it and you think, the first time you see something like that is against your morals, you're shaken up. But a fourth time, you're used to it. And that's why you gotta really make sure. I don't know. If I growing up watching television, in America. I don't know how anyone can be normal. I really don't. I really don't. You really have to watch out. If you want to put your kids in front of a video, you got to find out something. I mean, I think they're starting to get people who are making things that are cleaner and more appropriate, because they are literally trying to brainwash people, and you can't live in a world where they're putting information and it doesn't affect you. Even if you don't agree with it, you'll acquiesce. Like, okay, it's not so bad. It says, well, there's a great rabbi, the Chofetz Chaim. He says he went to the big city once and he saw a Jew smoking a cigarette on the Sabbath, and he fainted. He fainted. How is it possible? God's not to do it. And the second time he got nauseous. Third time he felt ill. But after a while, you get used to it. When I lived in Israel, my kids used to see there was no cars on Sabbath in our neighborhood in Israel. So my kids never saw someone driving a car, and if they would see someone in the distance, and they say, well, what's that car? I'd say it probably belongs to someone who's not Jewish. There are a lot of Arabs in Israel. Come to America and you see now a Jew driving on the Sabbath. It's like, and the first time I saw it, I was like, what? I mean, I've seen that, grew up here, but I lived there for 21 years. So that was my reality. So you can't think that you're going to be not affected by your reality. You are. You really need to put guards around the stuff, because even if you disagree, you watch it, you hear it, it at least makes it in your head, okay, it's another possibility. It's another No, it's not acceptable. This is wrong. I don't want to accept it. You want to do what you want to do? This is America. Yeah, America allows you to do whatever they want to do. Don't put it in my face. Don't subject my kids to it. So, religious Jews therefore don't watch, don't see anything. But you need to be careful, because everyone here, wants to do the right thing, and you have to know that the onslaught of ideas that are counter to the 7 Noahide laws and counter to righteousness and morality is what the world is espousing today, and they're showing it to you. So Nehemiah, when he did is he set up the fences that were going to be necessary for the Jewish people in the Second Commonwealth. In the First Commonwealth, in the first temple, it wasn't as necessary. The people were on a higher spiritual level, and even though they did fall, but there was prophecy. The Second Temple period prophecy is going to end. Now, wisdom will be very great. The whole Talmud is formed and written down later, but it's discussed in a certain way, because prophecy was the mode of the First Temple. Second Temple, these people that are establishing it are prophets. Ezra was a prophet. Nehemiah had Ruach HaKodesh. Was he a prophet? He had divine inspiration, and his comrades, the other people who built the Second Temple, Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi, they were all prophets, but they were the last of the prophets. And prophecy is going to end at the beginning of the Second Temple. So now we're working into a new phase. It's the phase now of the wisdom of the sages, and that's going to go after the Second Temple, and it's what keeps us going through this time. And so, even though we're coming to Tisha B'Av this week, and all the negative things that I told you happened, but we understand, and you need to know it, and everyone needs to know it. And Stephen asked me last week. I really appreciate Stephen's question about what the temple did, because I'm talking about it. You want to understand what is the great shakes here, what's happening. But everything that's happening now is leading to the time of clarity and understanding. And Nehemiah, in the end of his book, is locking in the safeguards, the rails that will protect the Jewish people throughout this time, reestablish the Second Temple, and lead in throughout the exile, because the Jews know that although the temple was destroyed in the 9th of Av, it is nothing to do with destruction. Destruction is only a means. When the parent hits the child, he loves the child and he's expecting the child to go to the next level. And that's why that's the day the Mashiach is born, the Tisha B'Av, and that's the time that the third temple will be built, in this time, speedily in our days. Okay, questions, ideas, comments?
Rabbi, I got one from Lara on YouTube. She's asking, Dear Rabbi, thank you for the great share. She says, I would like to ask how we can urge our relatives and loved ones to study Torah and prepare themselves for the coming of the Messiah. No one seems to care, she says.
Yeah, I'm not laughing because it's funny. It's not. It's just, yeah. You know, it's a hard question. It's a hard question because, first of all, why do people not care? You know, when I was a kid, they had 5 TV stations or 4 or something. Now what is there, like 200 out, 300? So, like, you know, entertainment. Everyone needs to relax sometimes and chill out and reestablish themselves. And that's why I think there is a place for, like, you know, I know that I never saw these movies. I know Ben Shapiro is making some movies to try to make things that were not woke and not impure. I'm not vouching for any of the movies. I don't know if they're what they are. I haven't seen any. But the idea people might need sometimes to relax and recharge themselves, that's fair. But what's happened is that everyone is moving in a system of comfort, and the comfort makes you, to quote Pink Floyd, makes you comfortably numb. That's what happens. The people at a certain point, it's like, okay, they change the channel 3,429. Okay. So the problem is that you know, the comforts of America and of modern society change people's mindsets. I'm not talking about the Jews now. Look at if you ever look at medieval art, you're like, what were these people thinking? Their lifespan was 35, and their every piece of art's about hell and heaven. They're like, they weren't on the right path. That's 100% correct. But it took care of their minds were, you know, affected by they weren't numb because of the comforts of their world, because their world didn't have that. They were misguided. They thought they could buy their righteousness and go. The knights were never these honorable people. They were actually very disgusting. The knights used to go and rape and pillage and everything else. People don't really realize that the knights, they went to the Crusades. Yeah, they killed and pillaged along the way, and but the people but they bought from the Catholic Church. They were buying their world to come. That's what they were doing. Terrible. I don't know what they call it, absolution. I don't call it in Catholicism. But this idea they could be whatever they are, but they're going to pay and they're going to buy it. All wrong. You can't do bad things and buy your way out of it. There's no such a thing. But the idea that their minds were obsessed with the transient nature of life is very far from the consciousness of people today. And that's unfortunate because, you know, God has been so kind to us that the comforts of the world are such that it gives us the ability to have spiritual pursuits. But at the same time, what they're doing is they're making us numb. So that's problem one. So you can't go, and it's hard to move people. Now, so what you got to do is, and this is what I do. I do this, I came to America to teach Torah. Now I'm teaching Noachides also. When I came, I was teaching Jews who were not connected. And the first thing I did, I tried to find something in the world that they had an interest in, that I could show them something that would pique their interest. Because you can't talk to a person who who is not able to receive something and give it to them if they don't want to receive it. Lara sent me an amazing question not long ago. She sent me this question. She said, I hope you don't mind me saying it to everyone, Lara, but I haven't had time to get on my computer because things going on. So I'm just going to answer you now because it's relevant what you're asking now also. Lara had said, it's fascinating to look that when God, when after Adam and Eve did the sin, so they couldn't see God. It says that Adam and Eve were hiding in the Garden of Eden. And then God asked them, did you eat from the tree of knowledge? And it's so deep what happened. So Larry asked me, is that a question of a response that God is giving us to what we do as a direct response? And the answer is yes. You have to understand like this. God always wants to give us. Always. If you do not want to receive, then it's not that he's not giving, so you're not getting. Let's say I turn the hose on and I'm filling up this cup, but the cup, you put a cap on the cup. So what happens is you're trying to put the water in, but it can't receive it. So what happens when people go and they don't see God in the world, they think that God doesn't see them. It's like the kids, that old kids game is the best. This is the kids game. Kids go like this. You can't see me. You can't see me. No, I can see you really well, but you can't see me. So you think I can't see you. When you go and you're not open to receiving, then you perceive that God is not giving you. It's not that he's not giving you, it's just that you're not receiving it. And therefore you can't get it. And that's why the whole system is a reflection of what happened. When people are angry people, everyone looks angry to them. That's the way they see the world. So that is what your question was online. I'll explain more. If not, you can tell me and I'll spell out more. But it's the same thing here. If people don't have any interest in hearing something, you can't give it to someone who has no interest. There's no way to do it. If I don't care, there's no way to go and say, but you should. But I don't. But you really should. But I really don't. You're not going to get any place. So you got to figure out, well, what speaks to the person? Unfortunately, you got to find something of some substance to build off of. If there's nothing of substance, if all the person cares about is beer, okay, so what are you going to say? Yeah, well, thank God he made beer. I mean, what exactly are you going to go and make the conversation about? But if you can find something that people like, for example, I always tell people like this, and this is, I wrote this in my book. It's in the first chapter. I explain the idea of pleasure, and this physical pleasure and spiritual pleasure. Physical pleasure is all based on the same concept. Physical pleasure is like this. You have a lack, it gets filled. You're hungry, you eat. But once you finish that meal, you just down that giant steak. If they came over to you in the restaurant, they said, "Good news. I know you ate our 25-pound, steak, and you're stuffed to the gills, but you won another steak. The condition is you have to eat it right now." You're not going to do it because I have no ability to receive it, because the whole physical pleasure is based on the same thing. Empty, full, empty, full, empty, full. So when you get hungry again, you want it. After you finish it, you can't eat it. Physical pleasures are all based on the physical world, so they're all temporal. They all go and come and go. Spiritual pleasures are different. How do you want to give an example of that? It's about love. If a guy says, I say to a guy, listen, Mr. Schwartz, you love hamburgers. Your son's causing you a lot of trouble. We're willing to trade you a life supply of hamburger for your son, Billy. Now, Is any normal human being going to do that? No, he won't. The experience of Billy cannot be compared to the experience of a hamburger. No matter how good the hamburger is, how bad Billy is. The experience of the child, experience of love. You could say on a hamburger, I had enough. You can't say on love, I love enough. You could love more. There's no limit to it because it's not a physical pleasure. Physical pleasures are not limited by time and space. Physical pleasures are all limited by time and space, and therefore they are lower level pleasures. Physical pleasures have numerous problems. One problem is that there itself could lead you to bad stuff. There are bad physical pleasures. There are physical pleasures that you don't know how to balance, and the too much and it hurts you. But even if you know, this is the part I want you to get. So physical pleasures are limited because it could be negative. If they're bad pleasures, they will make you unhappy and they will make you feel bad. If they are good pleasures, but they're not in the right proportion, they will make you imbalanced and make you crazy. But even if you do proper pleasures in the proper balance, they are low level because they're all tied into the physical body. A spiritual pleasure is so much higher because it's not limited. So no person is going to trade in their son for all the hamburgers in the world. They're not comparable. There's just two things that you can't compare them. It's a different pleasure. Physical pleasures are and everyone is stuck in physical pleasures. When they start to understand spiritual pleasures are greater, well, what are some of the spiritual pleasures? How do I get some of these? What does it mean? How do I feel a sense of happiness that I'm doing the right? Happiness, by the way, is I mean, you should just know it's fascinating. In Hebrew, Eskimos have like 23 words for snow, right? Because they would snow. Jews have like tons of words for happiness. It's like one of the largest amount of words that we have. We have simcha, sasam, gila, rina, ditza, chedva. So many words for this experience because they're all a little different. They're all a little different. The concept of happiness that we talk about in America and what it means in terms of the real root of happiness in Torah thinking is very different than what people know this, but they don't realize it. If I say to you, okay, you can get a steak, does that produce happiness? If I give you all the physical pleasures in the world, does that produce happiness? It actually does not. It may produce comfort, but it does not produce happiness. So happiness really is a byproduct of a person living their lives in a proper way. It's a sense of overall happiness that I am doing what I am supposed to do. I'm living my life in a way that is right, and I get a sense of contentment and happiness because it's the byproduct of doing what's good and doing what's right, and I feel happy now. So you can't sell that. It's not a product. It's not a product that you can go buy in the store. And that's what people made a big mistake. I'm going to buy my happiness. And then they become rich and they don't have happiness because they equated it wrong. They thought happiness meant. Now, happiness may be the pursuit of certain ambitions that you feel are purposeful and maybe give you some sense, but it's not the objects itself. So, Lara, what am I getting with this whole thing? That might be a way to speak to them. If you can find a sense of something that gives a person a sense of happiness and a sense of pleasure that is beyond a low level eating a hamburger, then you could talk to them about, like, what does it mean? What is a higher pleasure? Do you feel good when you do something good? Most people do. Why? Why do most people feel good when they go and do something good? I just gave charity. I feel good. Why do you feel good? You just lost money. Crazy. Because you feel you're doing something right. It's a byproduct of doing something right. So that could be an entryway to speak to people. But again, my summary of what I'm saying to you is that, A, you need to find a place that's going to speak to them. If they are closed off from hearing, they will not hear anything. So if you want to affect someone, you got to find something that speaks to them. And something that speaks to them, and it's within a sense of how that matters to them, and you could show them that there's a greater way to experience. Like, for example, everyone wants pleasure. If somebody knows that I can get greater pleasure by living my life in the right way, and that'll make me feel more pleasure, it's a higher level pleasure, then most people will want that. It just might be stuck, they might be able to get out of it, but that could be an entryway to do it. Okay?
I've got a question.
Yeah. Let me say, Lara, if I didn't answer your other question fully, send me a message and I'll answer your other question more fully if you need, okay?
Can I ask a question? Can I ask?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I hear you, Stephen, yeah.
Is it already written how Mashiach is going to be revealed? Do we know how?
It is written, but it is written. However, it is not readily understandable until after it happens.
So how do you know anything of how he will be revealed, or how he will come up onto like center stage, so to speak?
Yeah, we know a lot about it, but I'm just telling you one thing. If ever you hear a rabbi getting up and saying, or anyone saying, this is how it's going to happen, and quoting verses, they're not correct, because by definition, it's only after the fact, when it comes, you'll see how every prophecy about it happening is fulfilled. So we don't know, because it's like this. Imagine a person who's who's going through an experience, not a guy going to jail, God forbid, and he goes to jail. He knows when he's getting out. So there's a little bit of a comfort he's going to be getting out. It's harder if he doesn't know. And therefore, the challenge of the process of Mashiach coming is that process that we don't have exactly the dates. Now, there are people that say that there's, that in the book of Daniel, he starts to reveal it, and God doesn't let him reveal it. He starts to do, God doesn't let him reveal it. There's a story in the story of Jacob when with his sons in the book in chapter of Vayechi. He starts to reveal it. He won't let him reveal it. So if there are some individuals or prophets that knew exactly what it would look like, that could well be. But it's not something that is able to be clearly revealed in the world by anybody, because it is part of the hidden thing that only Maimonides writes that only after the Mashiach comes, you'll know retroactively how every prophecy is true. Now, I'll tell you one reason why it's true, Stephen. Another reason why it's true. One reason is because the Mashiach coming, there's two factors here. One factor is God has a grand plan, and he's going to bring everything to its completion when he plans to. The second factor is our free will. When we act a certain way, then it says that we can speed up the process. Instead of I always talk about there's different kind of Jews in the world, and I love them all, but some of them are very confused, and they say things that have nothing to do with Judaism. I was very embarrassed. I don't know if you ever watched that RFK speaking at the hearing. An embarrassment. Did anyone see that RFK speaking at the censorship hearing? That was unbelievable. They try to censor him at a censorship hearing.
Are you referring when you say putting your hand to good things? Are you referring to Tikkun Olam as the overall kind of balance?
Well, I'm sorry. Tikkun Olam is a bit of a hijacked term,
Really?
it's being misused today. What it means is the Jews have to do all of the commandments properly. And from there, the nations of the world, as an extension of that, should do the commandments that they have to do. Now, if the Jews do it, to be honest and frankly, if the Jews do it, the Mashiach is going to come, and the nations of the world who want to be part of it will be part of it, and those who don't won't be. But it requires the commandments. The word tikkun olam means fixing up the world. It is a correct concept. It's actually a correct Kabbalistic concept, but it's been hijacked by people who are using it in not the right way. They're using it in the sense of what they call social justice. Social justice is a Jewish concept, but not necessarily the way it's being discussed today in the world. Social justice is the Torah tells us how to have social justice. The Torah tells us how to give charity. The Torah tells us how to act towards people. If those things are done, that is the process that brings the tikkun of the olam. Tikkun means the fixing of the world. So what I mean by acting properly is, I mean, Jews keeping their 13 commandments, Noachites keeping their 7 commandments. If the Jews keep 13 commandments, it will happen. The Noachites keeping 7 commandments is a positive thing for the individual. That itself will not. If Noachites keep the 7 commandments themselves, all the Noachites, that wouldn't necessarily bring the Mashiach, but it would definitely be a powerful effect on the Jews keeping the commandments. But what happens is that the Noachites keeping 7 commandments guarantee for themselves to be part of that process, and the process is actually brought into fruition. Mashiach comes either when God has his time, even if people don't act right, which is what we see, unfortunately. We don't see that, I don't know that every Jew is going to fix themselves up. I don't know, because there are Jews that are very, very lost today. Now, is it possible? Yes, possible. But if they get themselves together, they all keep the Torah, then Mashiach will come. If they don't, then God will bring it about when he's ready to, and he'll bring it on the time that he allots. So the idea of Mashiach coming has to do with free will also on how we act. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Can I ask you a little caveat question?
Yeah, please.
When you talk about the pleasure, when you talking about pleasure earlier, sort of selling it to like the person that is on the hamburger level, sort of there's a different degree of pleasure to be attained to as a conversational starter, let's say.
Right.
For us that are now confident, I am confident in Elohim for bringing me to this place of obedience. Would I be right in saying that Hashem is blessing me with a I don't know, just more of a tangible blessing in now living obediently to the law, because those laws, because it is an integral part of his of his will, and the 6 commandments said to Adam, and the last one, and as you put it all together and you live that, I believe he's the one who's brought me to this place, because it's almost like the vocation mixed with the strength. I feel very I feel quite tangible in my faith.
That's great.
There's a blessing in like the pleasure of if there's like a pleasure in blessing by obedience. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
I mean, there are a few different blessings happening here. One blessing is someone who does the right thing will be rewarded. There's no question about it. That's just a fact. Whoever you are, Jewish, not Jewish, whatever you are, you do what you're supposed to do, you will get good, because that's the way the world's set up. God created the world to give us good, and he created a world of free will that we could choose. So if we choose to act negative, we are distancing ourselves from that good he wants to give us. he could have created the world and not given us free will and just given us the good he wanted to give us, but then we wouldn't have done anything. So he put us into a world where we're going to choose. And when we choose good, we're lining up with that path of the blessings. So whenever person does what is right and good, they are rewarded. For Jews, it's not, sometimes might not be. The question of, is it going to be in this world or the next world? I think I don't. There could be some difference here, because if you look in the prayer of Solomon, Solomon said to God that when he said, Solomon prayed to God when he established the first temple, he said that if anyone who's not Jewish prays to the temple, Hashem should give them what they ask for. He didn't say the same thing for the Jews. Sometimes he said if the Jews need to go through a harder time to wake them up, then that should happen too. But Solomon asked that the nations of the world should have, I don't even call it an advantage, I don't know, it's advantage different, that they should, if ever they turn to Jerusalem and pray, God should answer their prayer. Solomon asked that of God to give that special situation, because he said some of the Jews might need to, or might be able to handle the challenge, and it may be a harder thing to handle for the world if somebody who's not Jewish understands and faces Jerusalem, that they should be able to get the physical blessings. So I think that the point I'm saying to understand this is that I think there are physical blessings that come from doing the 7 mitzvahs and doing the right thing. There are certainly eternal blessings that come from doing the right thing. So when a person does the right thing, they will get rewarded for what they do. That's point one, both in this world and for eternity. Second thing is that knowing that you are doing the right thing itself gives a sense of satisfaction and happiness, as I said before. And that's what you said about obedience. When I'm doing the right thing, it's like you people, like when you raise a child, the thing that makes a kid the craziest is lack of boundaries. Because when the kid feels that there's no one's in control here, there's no adult in charge, they get nervous. It's not acting really, really weird. So they demand their freedom, but they really deep down need to feel that there is boundaries within which they live, and that gives them a sense of confidence. So keeping the commandments and feeling that I'm doing the right thing and being obedient to what is my purpose in life, by definition, will also bring blessing. Yes.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah. No, it's, may I just say one more tiny little thing?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I've kind of come back on the tracks, as it were. I faltered a little bit because I got speaking with some people, and I don't know, I guess my mind went elsewhere. But through the week, it's almost been it feels like a long week. And when I was at the start of the week, I started fretting. I started thinking, where do I go? Who am I going to speak? Because I've gone through that behavioural pattern before, but now I've sort of like overcome it. I can sort of see now that in this kind of consecration where I am at home, the only objective is just to learn Torah and keep in class, keep in prayer. I've got books and stuff coming, but all my life, right? This is the point I want to get to. I've always asked myself, apart from what I do for work and a few hobbies and stuff, what is it you really want? What do you want to do? And I could never really answer, and it only struck me at the beginning of the week that the only thing I want to do is just sort of soak myself into pretty full-on study of Torah and reading and listening and buying the books. For some reason, it's almost like all the shady bits and the little areas have all sort of like come together. I know that I can feel a kind of strength in where I've come to. But the thing is, I acknowledge that as, like you refer to, like Elohim. I kind of see by my choices I've got to here, but there is a tangible strength that's kind of got me to it. That's what I feel,
Right. So that's 100% true. I just want to I want to qualify something, and this is what I asked to Lara before. God is always giving everybody the life raft. He's always sending the lifesaver out to everybody. The problem is some people don't want to take it. But you have to take it, you have to realize, oh, wait a minute. God is involved in my life. He does care. He is directing me. He is pushing me and pulling me to where I have to be. So when you start to see it, you start to feel it. When you close your eyes and you don't want to see it, then you deny it, and then you don't get it. So you're exactly correct. Yes, as you're starting to do, you're starting to say, "Wait a minute, are you calling from England? Where are you calling in from?"
About 20 miles south of London. We're in
Good.
Surrey.
So,
Nice.
so yeah, how do you end up here? How did I end up here? I don't know. God's arranging all the stories. Who's gonna see? Who's gonna meet who, and how it's gonna go about, and when you're gonna hear. I used to speak in my synagogue. It was very funny. When I used to speak in my synagogue, after I would speak, people come over and say, "What you said was exactly what I'm going through. I don't know how. Did you know what I was going?" I said, "No, I didn't know." I think the truth was that part of my speech, I wasn't planning on saying it. It came to me as I was talking. I wasn't planning on it. So sometimes, God moves, and he's always moving the scenario to get the world it has to be. And as Lara asked earlier, but if we're not, if we think God doesn't see us, we don't see God, then he doesn't see us. Not true. But the reality is, but if once we close ourselves off and we put ourselves, if we don't see God, it's as if we feel he doesn't see us. He hides himself, but that's not true. It's just that we're not allowing it. So once you allow it, you start to say, wait a minute, okay. So there is a source directing and guiding everything in the world. That's amazing. But most people, the reason why they don't get there is because of their own haughtiness. It's like, no, I'm in charge. So that's why I don't get there. But if a person has a certain amount of humility and starts to say, wait a minute, how did I get here? I didn't make myself. So there's a creator who made me. And the creator he loves all the things he created, and he's giving us all the opportunity to elevate ourselves to our free will, through keeping the commandments that he's given us. For the Jews, 30 commandments, for Noahide, 7 commandments, and he's giving us the ability to do it. And once I do that, then great, I'm doing what I have to do.
Yeah. I've got the Tanakh coming this week, the 3rd of August. I've been reading the Chumash.
Just make sure you always have a proper commentary. You got a lot. Just make sure that you're not getting something written by people who are making up their own explanations. Very important.
It's a Stone edition. It's off the Art Scroll.
Stone, yeah. All Art Scroll is fine. All Art Scroll books are fine. But the books that sometimes, because it's you don't know. It's like some people can make up stuff and say you have to. It's like we don't make up our own stuff. Everything comes from Moshe, from Moses down. We have a clear delineation of every generation of passing the Torah down till today.
Wow.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
Incredible.
Incredible.
Look at the fathers. It recites the whole transmission to our day. And we have today the rabbis who could trace themselves back to when that Mishnah said, the last rabbi there in that Mishnah, 2,000 years ago, who could trace themselves back to their rabbis. So we have a direct line of information, and only people who are following the Torah as it was commanded to Moshe, almost 4,000 years ago, those are only Jews that you could listen to about Torah.
It feels a bit weird having a beard,
What's that? You don't need to have a beard.
No, I've never had a beard before.
You don't need one. You don't need one.
Well, I kind of
You
feel
don't
like
need one. It's not. First of all, it's not an obligation for Jews.
All
For
right.
Jews, an obligation, but for Jews, they have an obligation. They can't shave, but
Oh, that's it,
Noachites
yeah.
don't have that obligation. You can shave.
All right.
So if you don't want a beard, you don't have to have a beard. You guys you just gotta be a good person. Keep the 7 Loachai laws. You know, realize
Right.
the God, thank God, pray to God, feel good, be happy, be good to your family, be a light into the world. That's what you need to do.
It feels like I've won the lottery and I've got nobody to take out to dinner just yet. Maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so pray for that too. Pray for that too, and hopefully that's going to happen soon too.
Thank
Once
you.
once you start opening yourself up, blessings start to come. So get it. As long as you're getting the side of good and the side of right, then hopefully things will open up for you and go from higher experiences.
Thank you. Bless you.
Excellent.
Okay, a pleasure. You too.
Anybody else in the group have any questions for the rabbi?
I actually have a quick one, if that's okay, Rabbi. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was actually pretty relevant to what you were just saying about the unbroken chain too. I'm just trying to fit Nehemiah in there. Is he part of the Men of the Great Assembly, or is he in the prophets,
Yes.
or in both? Okay.
Men
All right,
of the Great Assembly. Very good.
Thank
That's what I was referring to when I said that they set up this system. That's the Men of the Great Assembly. That's Ezra, Nehemiah. That's the whole cadre of 120 sages who are the reestablishment of the Second Temple. So Nehemiah is part of that cadre of sages that come and that's why it's like the Men of the Great Assembly are in the chain, and what they did was, if you look in the Mishnah like you're referring to in Pirkei Avos, as our fathers talk about how they created the fences around the Torah. So that's one of the 3 things they said. You got to know how to protect. Something valuable, you got to protect it. Same thing, Steve. You have something valuable, you got to be careful who to talk to and who to let influence you, because you got something valuable, you have to protect it. I'm saying you should be scared, but you should be aware that, okay, I'm not going to let myself get influenced by every other person that I don't want to be influenced by, because it's something of value. So yeah, Cheyenne, that is Nehemiah as part of that group. Yes. All right, guys. So next week we're not going to have a class next week. But we finished with Nehemiah. We'll be on the week afterwards. I will. I'm open. You can message me, rabbiingber@gmail.com. That's something you want to learn. I'll give out what we're going to learn next. And I will be in America another few weeks. Then back to Israel, but we continue from Israel too. God will.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Rabbi. Excellent material as always. I really appreciated it, as I'm sure everybody in the group did. I guess so. We're going to sign out for now.
Yep.
We will. Yeah, we're not going to be on next week with our Working Together series, but 2 weeks from now, Rabbi Ingber is going to be starting something different. We'll keep you informed out there. So till then, have a wonderful, wonderful day, everybody. Bye for now.